let's talk about what Jed York said today or recently. He said it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's unbelievable. Go ahead, lay it out there.
He said it's cool that it's cool that the Niners are keeping Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and it's a good thing because, it's a lot like when the Niners had Montana and Young, and if it worked for Eddie, why couldn't it work now? What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, you're talking about two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and you're comparing him to a guy that the league just told you has no value to speak of, and a kid who was at the FCS level who's made 2 NFL starts. And we're comparing them to Montana and Young. I just, I always say a dangerous comparison, but I think there's something should be learned from Montana and Young. And that is that Walsh, when he actually considered Young and Montana in '88, his own offensive coordinator came to him halfway through the year and said, you know what, the locker room's divided and we can't win unless you decide on a quarterback. And he said, I'm deciding on Joe. So, I think there should be something learned from that whole experience with Joe and Steve, but I don't know if it's an exact comparison.
First of all, Jimmy Garoppolo is not Joe Montana. Like that, and Trey Lance isn't Steve Young. They were choosing between Hall of Fame quarterbacks in their prime. Like Steve was in his late 20s, Joe was in his early 30s. This was a very hard decision for them to make. This is way different. Jimmy Garoppolo is a placeholder. No one looks at him as more than a placeholder. He could be out of the league in a few years if he doesn't want to be a backup. And Trey, he could be a flat out bust. We have no idea what Trey Lance is going to be. So the idea that to put either one in that sentence is silly. I don't think Jed should have even invoked this at all. But of course, It's the kind of thing that he would do.
Yeah. I mean, he's, and not to mention your backup, your lesser quarterback, in my opinion, is Jimmy Garoppolo. He's making $25 million.
Yeah.
So you've got that is in the equation as well. And then you've got a young quarterback that who knows what he is. He could be great. He could be terrible. We don't know. He hasn't played.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the other thing, like I was really young, but I went back and read the Wikipedia pages. So I know Steve Young never had to deal with a full season of healthy Joe Montana just sitting there critiquing him as the backup. Joe was the starter until he hurt his elbow. Then Steve Young replaced him and was the freaking MVP of the league in '92. The team went 14-2. Joe finally came back and was like, I can play. Too late. Goodbye. And it's not exactly what's happened in this scenario. It's not like Steve got the job and had to have Joe nitpick him before Steve had been an MVP. At that point, Steve had his own resume, his own stripes. Trey doesn't have that.
No. Joe had set the standard. Steve was playing to that standard. Joe was still in the locker room, but Joe wasn't able to play. So he was allowed to. Steve Young was ready to play at that point. Steve Young was in the prime of his career at that point, athletically. So he was ready. He was totally ready. He was a veteran seasoned quarterback by comparison to Trey Lance. Trey is trying to just establish himself and try to establish himself as the leader in the room. And then the somewhat popular leader of the room from the previous season sitting right behind him. I mean, that's just begging for trouble. And I can't imagine they're really going to go that far with that.